Paul Stokes, the audiobook reviewer here with my bearded, beer-drinking, book-blogging co-host, Brian Crespin. You're watching Audiobooks After Dark, a video podcast about audiobooks.
Tonight, we're sitting with author and narrator, Chris Sorensen.
Awesome. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, how are you doing?
Doing well. How about you tonight?
Good. I'm talking to two different time zones, I take it. This is nice.
Yeah, Central. It's still early, they say.
I'm originally from Central. So I'm an Illinois boy myself. So.
Okay.
Monmouth, Illinois. Nothing. Nobody.
Nope.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Wyatt Earp was born there. That's about it.
All right. So, Chris, tell us about what a day in the life is like. I'm especially curious because you're both an author and a narrator.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you about today. Today, my wife got to sleep until 8, and so I got up at 5. And I have a little maneuvering. We have 2 dogs, and I have to maneuver this little hallway to get past her to get down to the basement where my booth is. And at that point, I've also turned on her little space heater and turned off the main heat in the house. I have to make sure I have a little plug on the water cooler that is old and loud, so I have to turn that off. Then I go downstairs, prep myself, and fire up the iPad, get my pronunciation sheet out, and get talking. So that happens from about 5 to 8. Then it's coffee and breakfast, and get her out of the house as quickly as I can, and hope that nobody's blowing leaves or doing work next door, or somebody's coming to deliver a package and the dogs go crazy. So, and then I go to sleep. So somewhere in there, I do find time to write and brainstorm. I always steal away sometime. And that's why if anybody asks me, what are you binging? I say, I'm not right now. So, but end of the year is always busy. Everybody wants to get their titles off their plates. So this fourth quarter is always a bear. So
it's the same in audiobooks as it is in corporate life.
Yeah. I think someone wants to have 2018 on some sheet of paper. So you plow through, and then January you fall asleep until February.
Nice.
I take it, Paul, you've been busy at work in Q4?
Yes. Well, I'm still learning my new job. So,
yeah.
I don't even know what I'm doing. I just do things, and they come and tell me
the things
wrong.
My professional day job, I work around advertising. So Q4 is just dump the money we have. It's obviously the 2 largest times to buy things. So it's like, let's advertise the things we want you to buy. So it's been, I definitely understand the Q4 time crunch for sure.
Well, that was crazy. There was a time when I was just getting into just starting to record for Recorded Books in the city, and I was working in Secaucus, New Jersey, in the art department at the NBA. And so fourth quarter, basketball is gearing up. I mean, all the logos, everything's got to be done. And to say, you know what, can I take off a little time? I've got to go into the city and go down to Union Square and record a book. That didn't work very, very, very long.
Yeah, I can imagine them not liking that too much.
No.
So, Chris, did you find it easier or harder to narrate your own book?
Both. Both, and I'm going to do it different the next time. I can tell you that. It was easier because I knew everybody. I knew the story. I knew the tone of every chapter. But I know other audiobooks / writers who use the audiobook session as their final proof. And I think that is the way I'm going to go. It happened the way it did because I was going to self-publish the audiobook. I was going to produce it myself and go through ACX. But then Tantor, who I work with, Acquisitions reached out to me and said, we'd like to do it. So it kind of changed my timeline. So, but once you read something aloud, you know exactly what you want to change. So,
Yeah, that makes sense. I actually, when I'm trying to read, quote unquote, read an actual book without the audiobook, a lot of times I'll use a voice or a text to voice, and you
yep.
catch errors instantly. You're like, oh, that's wrong. Like, of course it's wrong. Sometimes it doesn't know what words are or
Yeah.
messes that up. But there's a lot of times you're like, that sentence doesn't sound right when you're saying it out loud.
Or you hear, or like every sentence in a paragraph has the word chair in it. Chair, blah blah blah, chair, blah chair.
That's why they say to practice your speeches and stuff like that, so you can say it out loud, make sure it makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, Paul, you have perfect recorded proof of what happens when you don't read something before you just start talking. I think 2 episodes ago,
Or like
3
5
episodes
minutes
ago, maybe. Well, yeah, that too. Yeah, yes.
And I've read that before. I mean,
Yes.
oh, it's terrible.
Hey, there was a series I did. I did one of those. I did 3 of those 13-week contracts for Audible, where they throw as many books at you they can for 13 weeks. And I did this series, and one of the characters wasn't described uh, until book 6 as having a specific accent. And I was, oh my God, what the? So it's like book 6 out of 7 or something like that. And so by the end of that book, they were slowly taking on that affect. But when you're getting a book a day before, you don't expect to be thrown with Portuguese or something like that 6 books down the line.
Wow, 13 weeks. How many books could you do in that time span?
Well, I learned it's sometimes it's 13, sometimes it's 15. It was 15 hours a week for 13 weeks. That's the first gig I did, and I went. That was I couldn't do that because they were going to do back to back. So I ended up doing 10 hours a week for 13 weeks, and that. I mean, I learned quick. At that point, I was just learning Pro Tools, and it's like sink or swim. So
I can imagine your voice was very tired for a while after that too.
I started sounding like Tom Waits. It was like stop reading books about nice, cute little squirrels and start talking about grisly murders and people hanging out in dives at 3 a.m.
Oh no. So it appears that you have over 200 books on Audible in various different genres. How and why did you become an audiobook narrator?
By default. I was an actor up until 2001. Then I was in a big bus accident, and I got all smashed up, and I had to learn how to walk again. It took me about a year to learn to walk again. And of course, it was right at that point when I was really killing it with auditions in the city for. I was up for this great Disney spot, and then boom, the bus, and that kind of shifted that. And so I started writing plays for a theater out in Colorado, and I met this guy who ended up being the casting director at Recorded Books in the city. His name's Andy Paris, and he just one day said, "Hey, you want to come in and lay down an audition, and Claudia will listen to it." And I got called back in, and she gave me some pointers and gave me my first book, and that was about 10 years ago, I think. And I still love that first book. I can't remember what it was. That was 200 books ago. I can't be expected to remember that.
Does one stick out in your mind more than others from all the books that you've done?
I really, really enjoyed doing the young adult series. Margaret Peterson Haddox's The Missing series, because I got to do the same characters, adding on, but do the same characters basically for 7 years. Every year the next book would come, I would do that, and so I was following along with it. And I got to know Margaret pretty well, and yeah, yeah. And so that one, I was weaned on that book, but yeah, I feel very comfortable reading for young adults. I think it's the short sentences. I think it's a lot easier than reading astrophysics.
I can only imagine. Oh,
I didn't think about the shorter sentences, but yeah, that makes sense.
You know do you know what I find to be one of the easiest books to read are self help, and now it's self improvement. Now it's feel good about yourself books. I keep saying that I could write one now because I've read so many.
Just take a little bit from each one.
Yeah, but those, you know how they are. There's a little bit of a formula to them. Each chapter has a wrap up. It has a middle section, has a quote at the top. I just feel like I can just relax when I get one of those. Right now I'm doing a 22-hour book on World War II strategic architecture.
Oh my gosh!
So
I bet that's fascinating.
So that's what these are for. These little candies, these pastilles, Olbas, are the only thing that gets me through 22 hours of World War II.
Yeah, that's 22 hours. Wow, that's a lot to talk about. A very specific topic too. That's
very specific, lots of German pronunciations, and then you have to go. Am I going for the specific German pronunciation, or am I going for an Americanized? What do they want? And so you kind of do it back and forth. So this one's been a bear. This one's been a bear. I deserve a beer after this one. Not a German beer, not a good American beer.
So I think you already answered this one, but is there? I think you answered it with YA, but is there the genre that's the most fulfilling to record?
I still think it's that one because
Okay.
really there's an energy to those characters, and there's a sense of wonder. And I don't have a voice that really lends itself to hard-boiled mysteries without putting something on. I mean, I'm much more like, hey, Chip, where are we going? I'm not so sure. Look over there. Wow. And I'm always going to look like this. Even when I'm 80, I'm going to be, I'm going to look like an infant. So,
do this. It helps.
I did that. I got married and I got shaved off.
right.
Yeah, this goes away. I lose like 15 years without even blinking an eye.
Yeah.
Well, very similarly, what's the hardest genre do you think to record is?
I think just straight drama. I've done a limited number of those, but I think I love stories that have a little bit of a skew to them, or I like to read something that I'm really interested in the subject. Otherwise, it really is more of a job, and it's less of me sitting back and listening. Half of me listening as an audience. So yeah, I love sci-fi. I love fantasy. I've done my share of orcs and trolls, and that's just a lot of fun. I mean, I think it's just easier to read those kind of things for me. I just find I think I find myself too bland when I'm just reading straight fiction. I put myself to sleep.
So what's your favorite thing about audiobook narration? Is it the doing it, the acting part of it, the
I would say,
around?
well, when I was a kid, I was doing my own version of audiobooks and radio shows with cassettes and sound effects and telling stories and recreating things. I was recreating Jaws with sound in the background, getting my brother in there to scream and do all that sort of thing. So I love audio storytelling. And then when I grew up, one of my first jobs was working in a library, and it was the first time I really experienced what audiobooks were. And I was in a long distance relationship at that time, and I had to drive down to Alabama, and so I could get an 8-hour audiobook and listen to it. And I just fell in love with that and certain narrators. but I never expected it to be anything that I'd be doing. Like I said, it really just kind of fell into my lap.
Excellent. What do you do when you're not narrating and not doing anything book related? Like for fun?
I like finding new breweries. I love that. Got my dogs, take my dogs out. My wife and I love finding little spots that have like the best pizza in Jersey, that sort of thing. There's not a lot of that time in the past 2 years. That's why you have to run away. I was for the past 10 years, I've been writing plays for a theater in Colorado. So I've written 13 plays, and so they would fly me out for about a month for read-throughs, and then up until opening night. All the other stuff is boring. I
have to basically have Paul through the internet wires hold me back from going off the wire completely and talking about breweries. It's gonna take everything you said. It took all my willpower to not just totally divert the conversation that way.
Yeah, well, we go back. One of the things that when I go back to Colorado, when I go back to that theater, my whole family lives in Fort Collins. So,
oh yeah, I've been out there twice now, and I think just in Colorado alone, I've done almost 50, and it's not even a third of them. Like it's not even. That's like 25% of just the ones in the Denver area, let alone Denver, Fort Collins. You go, outskirts.
Well, the water is so good. The water is just fantastic. So.
So now that we lost our entire audiobook,
that's fine. So what's your favorite kind of Colorado beer?
Yeah.
There's Horse and Dragon Sad Panda. And they serve it with animal crackers. It's I think it's a porter. It's a vanilla chocolate porter. And if you have a sip of that, you can narrate for about 8 hours straight. with about 700 pickups at the end of that.
How about local? What's a favorite, either a local brewery or a local beer?
Zigmeister. Is
that where you messaged me from last week? I think it was.
Could be, yeah. One of my buddies, an old roommate in Rutgers grad, Nick Sullivan, who's also helped me get into audiobooks. I think he's got 400. Yep, there he is. Zombie Bigfoot, Deep Shadow.
They just came in today, so it was the perfect time to show them off.
Oh, that's great. Oh man, he's having a blast. We actually were sitting. He was taking off a break from doing a book. I was taking a break off from doing a book, and we meet up at this place here in Lake Mohawk called the Mohawk House, and they have like about 40 beers on tap. And we just sit there and talk about books and talk about audiobooks and commiserate and talk about ways to get your voice back, glycerin and all that sort of thing. And he wanted to write this screenplay called Zombie Bigfoot. And I said, you know what? You should just write it as a book and narrate it yourself. And there's your evidence. He did it. Yeah, I think I don't know, he's got 400 books, I'm sure. He was recording back when stuff was on reel to reel. I mean, he is a veteran.
Both Paul and I are in the intro with our reviews. I was hoping Paul was in it too. It's the first book I've been actually published like inside of with a review, and I'm in it, and he actually signed it to say, hey, here you are.
Oh, wow.
But then I just opened it again, and Paul's in here too. He's on the next page. He's at the top here.
Awesome.
Look at that.
That's probably the first time for me too. I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
I did get quoted once on the cover artwork of an audiobook. That was amazing. And
that's big.
It was a two-fold book too.
Wow. Wow. So you wrote a main character who was an audiobook narrator. Is that cheating a little bit? I'm kidding, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely, it's cheating. It was there was a period of time when my wife and I we're out here if I could show you, we're out on a lake house right now, on a lake in the middle of, I mean, in the far reaches of New Jersey. And we came out here. We were living in the city, in Jersey City, and we came out here to take care of my wife's elderly aunt. And so we would live in one part of the house, and she was in her hospital bed in another part. And that went on for a few years. And that kind of situation in a creaky old house, um, I knew that the first book like this that I was going to write was going to center around that, because I was just waiting for one time when I'd be down there recording something and I'd hear a boom. And it never happened, but I went, well, I've got to write something about this. And then one night when I was doing one of the 13-week contracts, I wish I had saved it, is as a kid, I used to go like this. I used to go, Chris, and put my hand like this and kind of freak myself out sometimes. And I was recording and I was in between pages and shifting. And I swear to God, I heard in my earphones, Chris. And granted, I was going on no sleep and it was like 2 or 3 in the morning, but you don't forget things like that. And I went, there's something there. There's a germ of something there. So
I was going to ask about that. I was going to ask if there was any like weird feedback or any of the kind of the similar things you wrote about. Obviously not the exact same thing, but
yeah,
if any of that, like the feedback or like anything like that kind of came up while you were recording, and that's where it kind of flowered the idea.
Yeah, my hackles are going up right now because it was right after I had finished it and I had just started recording it. And I came up to upload my files to Tantor, and I was writing somebody had asked me to write something for one of their blogs, and I had written a few and I didn't want to do the same thing, so I did a little dialogue I just did a little dialogue between myself and the dark spirit in this book. And at one point I asked, where are you? And I typed out, right behind you. And wham, there was this sound as if a picture or something had fallen off the wall. And I could not find anything.
Oh my God.
and this room my office is right next to the room where my wife's aunt passed away. We were there, and that hallway I have to go down that hallway to get both to my office and to get downstairs to my whisper room. So it seems to have cleaned itself or cleared or something. I don't know, but for about a year and a half, I don't know. And while I was recording, it was definitely something was going on. I don't know. Maybe it was my thyroid. I'm not sure.
Maybe it'll come back when you're recording the second book.
Oh, no, please no.
I hope not. I hope not, for your sake.
Yeah.
So speaking of any future projects you're working on right now, you want to talk about? Anything we should be on the lookout for?
I am zeroing in on finishing book 2 of this, which picks up the story but shifts the perspective character-wise, because I didn't want to do a repeat of the same story. So it took me a little while to figure out which direction I wanted to go. And then I figured it out and just ran with it. So yeah, it's going to be book 2 in this series. It's called The Hungry Ones. And that'll be recorded as a final proof this time. So I've got a couple novellas I'm working on, and I've got a couple screenplays I'm working on with some production companies that I actually can't talk about because I actually signed something. So,
and I'm sure like 15 or 20 audiobooks too.
Oh my! I only have 3 between now and the end of November. That's it. This one, and 2 more. So
I know you said you were busy, but are you currently listening to any audiobooks?
I had to redo my wife's office. I repainted her office, and so I started listening to Dr. Sleep again, because I listened to it when I was driving. I think it's Will Patton who narrated that. I listened to it while I was driving, and I didn't catch it all, and so I started that again. I really like that. I like his take. He takes his time with things. Um, that and well, one of my favorites is George Goodell. I'm anything that he reads. I when I got to meet him one Christmas party, it was like meeting De Niro for me. Um, but I'll listen to anything that man reads, uh, and anything Nick Sullivan reads.
Well, I mean, of course.
There's a lot to choose from there.
Yeah, yeah, he is the master of accents and spot on accents too. What are you listening to right now? Who are you listening to right
Mm.
I just finished a book and it's so good. It comes out the 30th. It was I got my coffee here. Hold on.
Oh, you got a pre-release?
I did. Borderless by Elliot Pepper.
Oh,
Man, I found out he's the exact same age as me, and it made me want to kill myself. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh no.
He is a very, 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 very smart guy. And I follow him on LinkedIn. I follow him a couple other places, and one of the places he posted, like, how do you think of these near future concepts, and how do you think of? So the whole premise of both of these books is there's this new near future tech called the feed, and it's in your brain. He never explains how it's there. You don't have to like go to your computer to look stuff up. It's just all there. It's just the very typical near future. I want to know something, now it's in my head, instead of having to ask Siri, having to ask Alexa, that kind of stuff. And I'm glad I unplugged her, because she would have started talking to me now. So the first book, he kind of dives into that whole story, and then the second book, he dives into how it's going to be used in the wrong way, or how it could be misused. But somebody had asked him, how do you come up with these ideas? And he says, none of them aren't real. He goes, I just find things that are happening in Silicon Valley that people don't know a lot about, and I act like that's going to be a future thing. Like, okay, what if this new tech that somebody actually has invented becomes mainstream? So that's where his ideas come from. But I just finished it last night. It was excellent, and it comes out in a couple. It'll come out after this is released, or before this is released. So that's what I just finished up. Paul?
Nice. I'm listening to 3 books at the same time. One for commuting, one at work, and one at home, if that makes any sense. It makes sense to me, but I'm listening to newly released Lee Harden by DJ Mole. And of course, the official novelization of Halloween.
mm.
And then Death Rights by E.A. Copen, narrated by a very talented guy, Travis Baldry. In this book, anyways, he nails it. So it's just, all 3 of them are fascinating to listen to for different reasons.
I'm going to enjoy listening to audiobooks again soon, someday.
If you ever get some free time.
I'm gonna put on my headphones for the whole flight out to Portland.
Nice. So what do you say to people that come up to you and say, I got a nice voice, I should be an audiobook narrator?
I say, do you know what? That's great. Sit down and read this book for me for 2 hours. Let me hear you do that. And then when you're done with it, we can go have a beer and you can tell me what you're going to do next. It is the marathon of the voiceover world. Yeah. It really, you really have to. I mean, I know people who have routines of hot water and honey every half hour, of garlic tablets, of drinking apple juice to get rid of the poppings, and everybody's got their thing. I've got my little lozenges and slapping myself in the face every now and then.
I hope the audio is going when that happens. I'd love to hear one of those outtakes.
I'll save a couple of those for you. I'll send you a whole reel. It's good. Narrator slaps self.
Oh man.
2018 compilation.
Slaps himself 50 times during this hour. Like,
if anybody would buy that. Well, it's I do it a lot because I'm actually dyslexic, and I'm verbally dyslexic, which is just not right for an audiobook narrator. I've really, I mean, it's been the greatest therapy for me, and I really enjoy working by myself in the booth. Working with an engineer, if I know the engineer, it's great. But something triggers in my brain if it's a new person and they have a judgmental look on their face. Suddenly, the tongue just wants to creep up my sinus passage and ruin every B, T, and P that I make.
Is there anything that we did not talk about that you would like to?
I'd like to know if either of you have seen a ghost.
Yeah.
Oh,
I live in my wife's grandparents' house. And for about, so both her grandparents died in the house. Her grandfather died of, I think it was lung cancer. And her grandmother died of like a massive heart attack. So I didn't know, I'd never met her grandfather. I'd met her grandmother numerous times, but never met her grandfather. I knew about him. Like I knew his stories. So the one day I was in the kitchen, I was getting something to eat. And I just felt something kind of off to the side in one of the doorways. And it was one of those raise my hackles, like made my kind of the hair stand on end. And I turned my head and just saw this like fleeting image of someone standing, just kind of like leaning up against the doorway. And I didn't say anything. And it happened again, maybe like a couple months later. And finally, like the next morning, I was like, hey babe, where did Pa stand? Like when he was just chill, and I was like, did he ever do this? And I leaned, and she's like, that's where he stood like every morning. And I was just like, ah. And she'd never told me that story. It was never anything new. It was like, oh, okay. And then like I just got goosebumps thinking about it now. So yeah, that's the first and really only. But yeah, I didn't like, it wasn't like, yes, this is an ethereal thing. It was just like something was there. Something was just kind of chilling, watching. And as soon as I looked over, there wasn't anything, but like you could tell there had been something. So it freaked me out. But thankfully, it was just watching apparently.
Oh man, I'd have pooped myself.
Yeah, the first time I think whatever I was like making a bagel or something. I think the bagel went flying. I was not ready for it. I had to take a break from Chris's book numerous times. I couldn't listen to it at night. I couldn't do it. I just kept freaking myself out every time I'd get really into it. I was like, nope, I'll listen to it on my drive in the morning. That way I'm in a car. I'm not in a house, an old creaky house.
Yeah. Yeah. The old creaky house is the only one I got.
Yeah, same.
Oh, you ever see a ghost?
I've never seen one, but I've heard things and things have happened where, something happened. Totally believe in it because, there's a whole lot of energy right here. It just doesn't go away. So it's my take anyways. Right? Ooh.
Well,
I'm
so
getting
Chris,
you told TVs now.
You told the story about your wife's aunt taking care of her. I took care of my grandfather at night it was supposed to be like 6 months and it ended up being like 2.5 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And I had tried to sit down and watch the first episode of The Walking Dead. And so it's literally the scene where they're kind of walking. It's dead quiet. And he like looks towards the gas station and there's that little girl walking.
Right.
And I'm not even kidding. My grandpa, who was loud and but I didn't hear him, didn't see him. And he shuffles into the kitchen, into the hallway. I was like, we're not watching this. And I've never watched The Walking Dead. From that moment on, I couldn't do it. I was like, nope, because he walked out and scared the crap out of me. And I couldn't do it. And from that point on, I moved where I was sitting. I kind of sat. So the kitchen was on my right. I moved to the couch. So I would sit looking directly into the kitchen. So I couldn't do it anymore. So
I'd watch TV in a closet after that.
Yeah, it got me. It was only like 4 minutes into the first episode, and I was like, nope, we're good. Can't watch this anymore.
Whew.
But you talk about serial killers, I don't care. Ghosts? Oh no.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite things to do on Halloween as a kid was I had an AM FM radio and I'd tune into some Chicago station and people would call in and tell their ghost stories to to somebody, I don't know who he was, but oh my God, that was to me. I wish I had all of those tapes. There was one, somebody said, yeah, I was in my bedroom and I heard this scratching down the hall, and I opened the door, and this torso with no legs started floating toward me with its mouth agape. And I think I pissed the bed. I was in heaven, but I was terrified. Audio and ghosts go really well together, I think.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I said there were times I had to stop listening to Nightmare Room because it got me. It was so well done because you hit the tone right, especially because you wrote it and then performed it. So you wrote the tone and then knew the exact tone you wanted to get by. And you were a couple times of like, I was listening to it after work or something, and it was just getting dark out, and I was like, all right, we're good, we're done for the night, can't do it anymore. I'll listen tomorrow morning.
The next one, subliminally, I'll put in Brian.
You'll send me an early copy, and there'll be just Brian sprinkled in throughout the entire thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Get me in the chapter breaks where it's between chapter and chapter, and it's just dead quiet, and you get me right there when you're like, oh no, nope.
Chapter 5. Chapter 9. Save me.
That would be pretty neat. That might freak people out.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to talk to a couple of audiobook knuckleheads like us.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, really appreciate it.